The inability of slave men to protect their women and children against the wrath of the master caused enormous pain. In this passage read by Louis Gossett Jr., Jordan Johnson remembers the anguish of a man forced to watch his pregnant wife endure a whipping.
Husbands always went to the woods when they knowed the wives was due for a whipping. But in the field, they dare not leave. Had to stay there, not daring even look like they didn't like it. Charlie Jones was one slave that had his wife working in the same field with him. They was planting tobacco. He was setting out and she was hilling. Annie was big with child and getting near her time. So one day, she made a slip and chopped a young shoot down. Old man Diggs, the overseer, come running up screaming at her, and it made her more nervous, and she chopped off another one. Old overseer lift up that rawhide and beat Annie across the back and shoulders till she fell to the ground. And Charlie, he just stood there, hearing his wife scream and staring at the sky, not daring to look at her or even say a word.
Well, did you ever hear of any slaves being mistreated? Were any tales going around?
Yes, I know times of mistreated people they did, and I hear our folks talking about them whipping them till they had to breathe the back. They took the hole from the back.
Good Lord have mercy.
John Henry Falk interviewed a woman he knew as Aunt Harriet Smith.
The white folks everywhere. But them Russians sure didn't allow their colored people to be whipped. Sunday in the evening, the white folks let the preacher preach, because our folks go to their church preaching.
Well, did you go to the white folks' church any?
Yes, I went to Mountain City to the white folks' church many times. See, the white folks would have church in the morning, then we'd let the colored people have church at their church in the evening.
During slavery?
During slave time, yes, slave time.
Well, would the white preachers tell you to behave yourselves and be good to your master?
Yes, that's what they preach.
Spirituality helped many slaves make it through their daily routine of servitude and passivity. But organized religion was a part of their lives, only so much as their owners would allow. Laura Smalley.
No, did they have church? Did the slaves have church?
I never remember no church. Mama said, well, all the church, I didn't remember that part of all the church would have be a tub of water sitting just like this thing is, you know, and that would catch your voice, and they would have church around that tube, all of them get around the tube. Get around the tube.
Old Moss didn't want them having church.
They won't have no church. No, they didn't have church. And old master come along with one of them. One of them was there having church around the tube, and he's down praying. And so he's down there praying, just a praying. Old master come in, he just a praying. He come in, he did, and told him, get up from there. He didn't get up, he just a praying. He said, old master, come listen with me. He quit praying and then he asked the Lord, have mercy on old master. Lord, have mercy on old master. Lord, have mercy on old master. Old master was with a bullet. He told, have mercy on old master. And that old master, he kept it, wouldn't get up and just flinch, you know, it's like a person, you know, praying hit you in the flinch. He just prayed for old master. The old master stepped back and said, I'm ready mind to kick you naked. I'm ready mind to kick you naked. We can never stop praying, you know, he had to go on and praying. He go on and praying. Because he wouldn't stop. Well, that was through the Lord, you know, that's cause that.
Yeah, the Lord works a lot of things.
Yes, of course, the Lord was suffered him to stay down there and get that whooping and pray. You know, just keep it praying. You know, I think I jumped up. I don't know. Seemed like me, I jumped up. Because whooping with that way, I jumped up.
Well, what about getting married? How did they go about marrying the slave?
Well, they told me to jump over broom backer. I don't know. They told me to jump over broom backer. I don't know.
Didn't have to ask Master or nothing. Just go to Aunt Sue and tell her you wants to get mated.
Esther Roll as Caroline Johnson Harris.
She tell us to think about it hard for 2 days, 'cause marrying was sacred in the eyes of Jesus. After 2 days, Mose and I went back and say we done thought about it and we still want to get married. Then she called all the slaves after task to pray for the union that God was going to make. Pray we stay together and have lots of children and none of them get sold away from the parents. Then she lay a broomstick across the sill of the house we was going to live in and join our hands together. Before we step over it, she asked us once more if we were sure we wanted to get married. Of course we said yes. Then she said, in the eyes of Jesus, step into the holy line of matrimony. When we stepped across the broomstick, we was married. It was bad luck to touch the broomstick. Folks always stepped high 'cause they didn't want no spell cast on them. And Sue used to say whichever one touched the stick was going to die first.
Matthew Jarrett objected to the way slave marriages were trivialized by the white masters. He said, "We slaves know that them words wasn't binding. Don't mean nothing, listen, you say, what God done joined can't no man pull asunder." But they never would say that. Just say, now you married.
What about, Johnny, that business of having some of the Negroes, good hands, you know, and good women, good men going off and breeding them like cattle? Do you remember anything about that?
No, I didn't even see it. They wouldn't let children know that, you know, but I heard it after that they do that. But Stephen was coming up and let us know about things like that. But they say that was sure so. You know, just like a big fine-looking woman, a big fine-looking man, you know. Old boss wants you know, children from him, you know. They just fasten them up in the house or somewhere, you know, and going off leaving them there. You want to breed them like little hogs or horses, something like that, I say.
That was Laura Smalley talking about the attempts of certain masters to arrange relationships between slave men and women against their will. Rose Williams had a first-hand experience with this type of situation. Rose is portrayed by Jetta Jones.
There's one thing Master Hawkins does to me, what I can't shunt from my mind. I know he don't do it for meanness, but I always holds it against him. What he done was force me to live with that Rufus against my wants. After I've been at his place about a year, the master come to me and say, "You gonna live with Rufus in that cabin over yonder, go fix it for living." I was about 16 years old and had no learning. I just an ignorant child. I thought he meant for me to tend the cabin for Rufus and some other niggas. I took charge of the cabin after work was done and fixed his supper. Now, I don't like Rufus 'cause he a bully. He was big and 'cause he's so, he think everybody do what him say. We had supper. Then I goes here and there, talking till I was ready for sleep, and then I get in the bunk. After I was in, he come and crawl in the bunk with me before I knows it. I said, "What you mean, you fool?" He said for me to hush him out. "That's my bunk too," he say. "You touched in the head. Get out," I told him, and pushed my feet against him and give him a shove, and out he goes on the floor before he know what I was doing. He jumped up and he mad. He looked like a wild bear. He starts for the bunk and I jumps quick for the poker. It's about 3 feet long, and when he comes at me, I lets him have it over the head. He stopped dead in his track. He looked at me steady for a minute, and you could tell he was thinking hard. Then he go and sit on the bed and say, "Just wait, you think you're smart, but you're foolish in the head. Hush your big mouth and stay away from me. That's all I want, I say, and just sits and holds that book in my hand. He just sits looking like a bull. Then we sits and sits for about an hour, and then he go away, and I bars the door. Well, the next day when I goes to Missy and tells her what Rufus wants, and Missy says that those are Master's wishes. She say, you're a portly gal, and Rufus is a portly man. The Master wants y'all to bring forth portly children. I was thinking about what Missy say. I say to myself, I's not gonna live with that Rufus. And that night, when he come in the cabin, I grabs the poker and sits on the bench and say, get away from me before I bust your brains out and stomp on him. He say nothing and get out. Yeah, the next day, the master called me and tell me, woman, I paid this big money for you, and I done that for the cause I want you to raise me children. I put you here to live with Rufus for that purpose. Now, if you don't want whooping at the stake, you do what I want. I think about Master buying me from the block and saving me from being separated from my folks. And I think about being whooped at the stake. What am I to do? So I decided to do as the Master wish. So I yields.
Did the slaves ever try to slip away? They ever try to run off?
No, not on the place where we was. I never hear them say they run off from there. Other place I hear them stay in the woods and so long until they wear the clothes off and slip up.
Nora Smalley.
Now I heard Mama say when she was a girl, she brought from Mississippi. When she was a girl, did one old woman run off. She did run off. The beat her so she run off. And every night she slip home and somebody have her something to eat, something to eat. And she get that victuals and going back in the woods, stay in the woods. And then, just they tell me earlier, could you see, I don't know what their name, see so-and-so, ever see him? No. But you tell them if they come home, ring out with them to come home. Well, I'd be all the way till they come. So once this man stayed in the woods so long, till his hair on him long like a dog. And just growed up, and stayed in the woods. They stayed in the woods. And they couldn't get him out.
Or did any of them run off and get plumb free? Did you ever hear talk about them?
Hear them talk about them going off, going off the places where they're free. Well, I heard her say, I didn't know her. She said just like she be some white people, would come along, and he just get him off, carry him off, where he wouldn't be no slave, or wouldn't be beat up, and carry him off that way.
And I remember I take them over slavery time. There was no jailhouse on. Old long jailhouse. And they used to put prisoners in that jailhouse.
This is the voice of a man the interviewers called Uncle Billy McCrae.
And we used to go home, the people that were some teeth, we used to go home and steal bread and stuff and focus it on their bar to the prisoners. And there's no long jailhouse. They had hounds. And they brought them hounds in and brought 3 niggas. With them hounds running in cutting wood. And they, right across, like the creek there, they take them niggas and hook them. Let them niggas hollering and praying. Then they take them out down and put them in jail.
Arnold Graxton's early life was spent helping slaves to freedom across the Ohio River, while he himself remained in bondage. Clifton Davis reads Arnold Graxton.
Most of the slaves didn't know when they were born, but I did. You see, I was born on Christmas morning. It was in 1840. I was a full-grown man when I finally got my freedom. Before I got it, though, I helped a lot of others get theirs. The Lord only knows how many. Might have been as much as 200 or 300. It was way more than 100, I know. But that all came after I was a young man, grown enough to know a pretty girl when I saw one, and to go chasing after her, too. I was born on a plantation that belonged to Mr. Jack Tabb in Mason County, just across the river in Kentucky. Mr. Tabb was a pretty good man. Oh, he used to beat us, sure, but not nearly so much as others did. Some of his own kin people, even. But he was kind of funny sometimes. He used to have a special slave who didn't have nothing to do but teach the rest of us. We had about 10 on the plantation, and a lot on the other plantations near us. You know, how to read and write and figure. Mr. Tabb liked us to know how to figure. But sometimes when he would send for us, and we'd be a long time coming, he would ask us where had we been. If we told him we'd been learning to read, he would now beat the daylights out of us after getting somebody to teach us. I think he did some of that so that the other owners wouldn't say he was spoiling his slaves. He was funny about us marrying, too. He would let us go a-courting on the other plantation there any time we liked, if we were good. And if we found somebody we wanted to marry and she was on a plantation that belonged to one of his kinfolk or a friend, he would swap a slave so that the husband and the wife could be together. Sometime when he couldn't do this, he would let a slave work all day on his plantation and live with his wife at night on her plantation. Some of the other owners was always talking about his spoiling us. Mr. Tabb was always especially good to me. He used to let me go all about. I guess he had to. Couldn't get too much work out of me even when he kept me right up under his eyes. I learned fast, too, and I think he kind of liked that. He used to call Sandy Davis, the slave who taught me, the smartest nigger in Kentucky. It was 'cause he used to let me go round in the day and night that I came to be the one who carried the running away slaves across the river. It was funny the way it started, too. I didn't have no idea ever getting mixed up in any sort of business like that until one special night. I hadn't even thought of rowing across the river myself. But one night, I had gone on another plantation courting, and the old woman whose house I went to told me she had a real pretty girl that wanted to go across the river, and would I take her? I was scared and backed out in a hurry. But then I saw the girl, and she was a pretty little thing. Brown skin and kind of rosy, and looking as scared as I was feeling. So it wasn't long before I was listening to the old woman tell me when to take her and where to leave her on the other side. I didn't have nerve enough to do it that night, though. I told them to wait for me until tomorrow night. All the next day, I kept seeing Mr. Tabb laying a rawhide across my back or shooting me. I kept seeing that scared little brown girl back at the house, looking at me with her big eyes and asking me if I wouldn't row her across to Ripley. Soon as dust settled that night, I was at the old lady's house. I don't know how I ever rowed the boat across the river. The current was strong and I was trembling. I couldn't see a thing there in the dark, but I felt that girl's eyes. Well, pretty soon I saw a tall light, and I remember what the old lady had told me about looking for that light and rowing to it. I did, and when I get up to it, 2 men reached down and grabbed her. I started trembling all over again and praying. Then one of the men took my arm, and I just felt down inside of me that the Lord had got ready for me. "You hungry, boy?" is what they asked me. And if he hadn't been holding me, I think I would have fell backward into the river. That was my first trip. Took me a long time to get over my scared feeling, but I finally did. And soon found myself going back across the river with 2 and 3 people, and sometimes a whole boatload. I got so I used to make 3 and 4 trips a month. A lot of my passengers went on north to other parts of Ohio or to New York or Chicago or Canada. Canada was popular then because all the slaves thought it was the last gate before you got all the way inside of heaven. I don't think there was much chance for a slave to make a living in Canada. But didn't many of them come back? They seemed like they'd rather starve up there in the cold than be back in slavery. I guess you could call me a conductor on the Underground Railroad. Only we didn't call it that then. I don't know as we call it anything. We just knew there was a lot of slaves always wanting to get free.
The voices, thoughts, and feelings you have just experienced came from people who were born slaves, survived the Civil War, and lived through the Reconstruction. It's easy for us to glorify those who fought or escaped the horrors of slavery. At the same time, we must not forget those who silently endured and taught their children how to survive until freedom came. Former slave Tom Robinson said, "You can take anything. No matter how good you treat it, it wants to be free. You can treat it good and feed it good and give it everything it seems to want. But if you open the cage, it's happy."
Come people is free, you ought to be awful thankful. And some of them are sorry they are free now. Some of them never rather be slaves.
Which would you rather be, Uncle Phil?
Which I'd rather be? You know what I'd rather do? If I thought, every now and then, that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a woman and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog. You're not a thing but a dog.
Remembering Slavery was produced by Smithsonian Productions and the Institute of Language and Culture. Special thanks to the Library of Congress. Jackie Gales Webb and Kathy Farnell producers. Written by Judelyn Lilly and Jackie Gales Webb. John Tyler, production manager. Todd Holslander, production engineer. Martha Knaus, marketing manager. Wesley Horner, executive producer. Original music by Bryant Pugh. I'm Tonia Stewart.
To learn more, visit our website at www.pri.org. Remembering Slavery is available on cassette with a companion book. For more information, call 800-233-4830. Remembering Slavery is made possible by major grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, dedicated to expanding American understanding of human experience and cultural heritage, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, with additional support from the Southern Humanities Media Fund and the Alabama Humanities Foundation.
PRI, Public Radio International.